What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action from England and Italy, Premier League, and SerieA. I am your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm doing real well. Excited. Milan seems to be back. And also, I am taking part in a FIFA tournament soon. I'm pretty sure that the first round starts this weekend. So, always excited for that kind of stuff. So things are good.
Yeah. That is good. I think Milan being back, Milan, we've talked about this roulette in the top six in Italy, and that each week it feels like there's one team that kind of falls out, has a bad week, and everyone else wins. This week, hilariously, I think we even might have predicted this, or at least wish cast a little bit how funny it would be. Cremonese finally get their first win in SerieA. Yeah, which is good and bad for us because I think it was one of my favorite kind of running bits we've had all year. And then we started to talk recently about how they go a few more losses, and you're talking about being one of the worst teams of all time in terms of how late it took them to get a win. They finally get it against Roma, a 2-1 victory. Cremonese's first goal is absolutely beautiful. It's just an unreal volley. A little bit of controversy in this one. Jose Mourinho gets sent off. He's now suspended for 2 games, crucially as well at the weekend, which is obviously a big game. So not great if you're a Roma fan, of course, not having your manager available for a really important game this weekend against Juventus. So, but we finally get to give Cremonese their due, and they're like I think they've won like 4 games this season. Half of them have been against Roma. So. You gotta give respect to the fact that they seem to hate Roma so much and want to make their lives as miserable as possible.
Listen, I'm okay with that too. I'm on train with that. That's my MO, right? I love seeing Roma, have stuff like this happen to them. So I couldn't be happier. It's unfortunate for them that they're without their manager for 2 games. That's pretty crucial, especially given the top 4 race and the top 6 race in Italy, how close it is. So tough loss for Roma. Great to see Cremonese finally get a win, but it's still such a long way to get out of the relegation zone for them. It's going to be tough.
Well, they did leapfrog Sampdoria, which has to make you feel, as a Sam fan, pretty miserable. The fact that this team went 23 games without winning. And their first win puts them above you. I mean, that is honestly got to be a low moment. And Sampdoria, a proud, storied club. It's been a terrible season for them. And I don't really see a way out of this for them. Yeah, I don't see a way out of it for Cremonese either. I think it's a nice story. It's nice that they've gotten their win. I had to fact check myself. They literally have only won 4 games a season. 3 of which have been Coppa Italia. 2 of those 4 wins have come against Roma. So they
That's incredible, to be honest.
It's almost I think if I'm a Roma fan, at least I can kind of laugh at the misery of it all. And at least you're still in the Europa League. You got that going for you at least. But man, It's tough because I think Roma had the chance to kind of reestablish themselves and put themselves back in the top 4 race and kind of build up a little bit of cushion, keep some momentum going. And I think it's a tough loss in that respect. And now you don't have Mourinho at the weekend and for the next game in Italy, so that is not great. Not a ton to glean from this game, truth be told, though. But I think it was a very fitting way to lead off the show that we have finally ended the streak for Cremonese. No more talks, no more bringing up anymore about how they have not won a game. They can move forward for the rest of the season and look forward to Serie B next year. That's the nice thing. They can put it behind it. At least they're not going to be like one of the worst teams ever.
Yeah, this is a tough road ahead for Roma as well. They got to play Juventus and then Sassuolo. So tough games to be without Jose Mourinho. But, they do have a little bit of cushion to fall outside of, top six. They're on 44 points, and outside of the European spot in seventh is 35 points, which is Juventus. But
I'd like to bring this up. I would like to bring this up, actually, because you highlighted their next two games in SerieA. In between Juventus and Sassuolo, they have Real Sociedad in the Europa League. After, dopo Sassuolo, Real Sociedad again, then Lazio. I mean, the next 5 games,
and that's a derby. Like that's.
I mean, truly, that is a season-defining March that they have coming up now. Like, I truly think the way their season goes will be defined on the rest of the way March goes for Roma. So it is a crucial stretch for them. And, again, having no Mourinho on the touchline for the next 2, not ideal. I know for Spurs in England, it's worked not having Antonio Conte there. His assistant has won every game that he's taken over for him in Italy and in England. But, I worry about that aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, it's like we said, this whole month of March now for Roma is vital in terms of, kind of, I think their hopes for the rest of the season, because it's a make or break month for sure.
Mentioning the other team that kind of threatens into European spot, but just outside, Juventus. They got a win over the weekend as well, right? 4-2. They kept their winning ways going. That's 4 wins in a row for them.
For Juventus?
Yes. Yeah, for Juventus. What do you think of that game? I mean,
so
I embarrassed myself actually before you get into this. This is actually hilarious. So here we go. Dom talking about FIFA again. There was a showdown card that they put out for this game. You could either do the SBCs, and whoever won the game, the player would get a +2. It was Locatelli, and then they had I think his name's Sanabria. He's a striker for Torino. I was at the gym last night, or I was at the gym the day this game was being played, and I just looked down at Twitter for a second, and somebody was making fun of Juventus for being down. I think it was 2-1, but I thought that was the final. I didn't know what time the game was being played. I wasn't paying attention to this game. And so I saw that, and I go into this Discord thread, and they were all talking about how Juventus is going to win this easily and all this and that. And me, a lover of Juventus tears, I literally just started going off. I was like, ha, 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 who said Juventus was going to have such an easy win? And then I'm talking to somebody else maybe 2 hours later, and they're like, Dom, Juventus won. And I'm like, no. I had to go back and delete all of it and apologize. It's like I embarrassed myself. Just own up to it.
That's a tough look for you. I'm going to be very honest. I don't really have anything comforting to say. This game was notable for 2 returns. Paul Pogba back in the lineup, or at least coming off the bench. Nearly a year since we've seen him play last. He obviously was struggling with injury a lot, and has had a tough time of it. Where we're sitting here, and this was the last day of February, but we're sitting here in March, and the first time that we're seeing Pogba play this year because of that knee injury he sustained in the summer. He definitely, looked okay. That there was nothing within his performance that felt like, wow, he's all the way back. At physical performance again. But if you're talking about a run in and where they are in the Europa League, for example, because that's probably their best chance at getting into the Champions League, having him back could certainly be a crucial part of this. The other return, it was Bremer's first, not his first, but his biggest game, I think, as a Juventus player in terms of impact. It's kind of the crucial goal in this game, what ends up really being the winning goal. And Bremer, I think, has gone a little under the radar this season in terms of his performances, because obviously there's just been so much other things to talk about with Juventus. But he's had, I think, just as good a year as he had last year with Torino when he was, we can all remember he was SerieA Defender of the Year last year. But, just looking at his numbers, looking at his performances, I think he hasn't really missed much of a step this year. And I think that's been quietly a really crucial part. For Juventus, it's very fascinating because this game is a good like distilled version of them this year, and like they've kind of won in ways that we've typically expected them to win, right? When they went on that big win streak from like November past the World Cup break, it was a lot of 1-0 wins, and a lot of just really like suffocating the opposition. But we've also seen, Baranecchia gets a start in this game for Juventus, which is like, a younger midfielder getting started in a big like derby like this is not something you would typically expect. We've talked about Fagioli all season and Moretti, who's out injured, but I think Allegri's sort of small pivot, especially post World Cup, to like younger players. It makes me think that that Allegri has a future, because I think there was genuine concern in like October about his like future with the club, and I think part of the reason he wasn't sacked is because they financially couldn't afford to, and we learned that was not just like made up, that they really Juventus has a lot of problems financially because they got a lot of fines to think about in the near future. But it is funny too, because I think you say it kind of joking, but there is a reality where even with the points deduction, this team is back in European spots. I don't know about Champions League, but they're back. They're only 6 points off of Atalanta in sixth spot.
Yeah.
That's achievable. But
the way Atalanta's been playing, yeah, it definitely is.
That's an achievable mark. They would be, again, they would be definitely the second team in Italy right now, Juventus, if not for that points deduction. And I think, honestly, comfortably so. They've honestly, we've talked so much about the merry-go-round of like those 2 through 7 spots. I think Juventus have been one of the more consistent clubs in that, situation. They've dropped points here and there, maybe uncharacteristically, but for the most part have been, pretty consistent this year. Again, especially like post World Cup break, they've had some stinkers, but with everything going off the field, you can kind of expect and understand that.
Yeah, they're tied with the second most wins in the league with Inter at 15. So of course this team would be a top of the, well, not very top, but top end of the table team if it weren't for these point deductions. So, but never would I think I'd see the day that Juventus was tied with Bologna on points in the SerieA table, where it wasn't like the first 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like,
imagine telling a Bologna fan, like, hey, March 2nd, you are going to be level on points with Juventus. I think a Bologna fan is losing their mind on that.
I'll take that and raise you one. You tell that Bologna fan, not only will you be tied with points with Juventus, but to get there, you beat Inter.
Yeah, you beat Inter. You beat Inter at the weekend, and to move level on points with Juventus, I think Bologna fan is probably in a lot of. I mean, it's still a good year for Bologna, all things considered, right? I mean, this is a team that is definitely having a good campaign and has not. They've obviously had a lot of like off the field stuff too, right? Which has definitely been, I think, a mental and like psychological challenge. But I think Bologna deserve a lot of credit. Let's move into that, because Bologna did Napoli a big favor this past weekend. They beat Inter 1-0. The Napoli title charge is becoming very obvious at this point. I mean, it's been clear for the past month and a half that Napoli are going to win this title, and just every week we get a little bit more confirmation of that, and they have not let up whatsoever. For Inter, it was their turn this week. They drew the short straw, and they were one of the top teams in Italy that had to just take their L and move forward, and they'll win 3 straight off the back of this, because that is what this like top 4, top 5, whatever race has been in Italy, for the past few months. So, I'm curious to see who it'll be next. Lazio play Napoli this Friday. It could be them. They take the loss, and then you kind of see them going a little bit of downturn in form. And then, pick it back up. Like, I'm curious to see who it is next. But yeah, shout out to Bologna for helping Napoli extend the lead at the top. Inter with a tough loss, but Inter have had these. I still think, Napoli are the best team in Italy. I still think Inter could beat anyone on their day. That has been their capability. And I am curious to see, what kind of, I'm really curious, truly, with a lot of these Italian clubs in Italy, in the Champions League, because I think between Napoli, Inter, and Milan, I think all 3 of them are possible to get out. I think Milan had the toughest battle simply because they have to go to London, and that's obviously going to be a challenge. But they go there with a 1-0 lead. They've definitely picked up in form. Napoli, I think I would consider through. It's not finished yet, of course, but they're going back to Naples with a 2-0 advantage. You expect them to go through. Inter, I would say are probably through as well. They have to go to Portugal, but they have an advantage in that tie 1-0 as well. Again, not a solid, but there's a real possibility we get 3 teams into the quarterfinals, and I think any of those teams, Napoli are obviously the cream of the crop, but I think even Milan and Inter on their day could beat a lot of teams in Europe. And you look, it's gonna be an interesting one because there's gonna be 1 or 2 teams that I think a lot of clubs will want to get in the Champions League draw. I know we're thinking, a few weeks in advance, but maybe we see an Italian team in the semifinals. I don't think it's impossible.
No, it's definitely possible because it's funny that people have kind of underrated SerieA for such a long time because Juventus has dominated the league over the last decade, and you really only get like one other competitive team out of that fray that like makes runs in Europe, and that's Inter, and that's what it's been recently for like almost the last 7-8 years. So the fact that teams like Milan and Napoli are back and are competitive in Europe is really good for the league. And I think people kind of still underrate them as clubs that can beat most teams in the world on their day. Thierry Henry was talking about that in one of the broadcasts for CBS Sports and Paramount Plus, during the last round. He was saying we talk about all these English teams and how they're the greatest, but what about Italy? We have 3 of them here. And one of them beat an English team. We have this talk about, the Premier League being the cream of the crop and the toughest teams and stuff like that. And on one end, yes, you've had an English team either win or get to the Champions League final, of I don't know how many of the last years. But
quite a few of them.
It's been fairly frequent.
You've had an
right?
all-English final, twice in the last 4 or 5 years. You've had an English team make it 4 out of those 5. An English team has been in the latter stages of the tournament a lot in recent years.
And then, you think of your other normal powers. You're obviously thinking Bayern, you're thinking Real Madrid. Barcelona's kind of fallen from that contention, in my opinion. And
they're out of the Europa League even.
So. Yeah, so and then you have teams like Milan, Inter, Napoli who are really playing really, really good football, and people still are like, nah, that's a farmers league. SerieA isn't anything. I wouldn't be surprised.
Some people are going to find out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams ends up in the semifinal. I'm not surprised whatsoever.
A lot of it is going to depend on the draw, but that's that's just looking far in advance. Dom, Milan got a win, a really nice win against Atalanta, who have obviously been good attacking wise this season. Not quite the heights that we're used to seeing them, but it's not often that Atalanta are shut out completely in a match. They are still one of the better offensive teams in SerieA. I have to believe that it's no coincidence that Mike Maignan returns to the starting lineup and Atalanta don't even get a shot on target in this game.
Yep.
I think one thing we underrate about keepers is communication with the back line and organization. And I don't want to show any shade at all to Tata because he stepped in a hard moment. Let's be real. Initially this injury was not supposed to be a 3-month injury, and has guided that position, I think, pretty admirably for all things considered. For a backup keeper, I really don't think he's been terrible. But it is an upgrade. You're talking about probably the best keeper in SerieA in Mike Maignan. So
now, when you brought up the communication, which is huge, and I agree with you on that. But as a fan of a team with a goalkeeper whose distribution is just so good, right? One of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. That's something that Maignan does so well. His kicking and the way he can deliver passes, both playing out of the back or those long balls to Leao or to Giroud if he makes a run, he can hold up play. Those things are super important. And, Tata Rushano doesn't have that. So having Maignan not only solidified that back line, but his distribution also helped Milan get other chances. I got to give credit to Pioli for kind of silencing the critics recently with the changes he's made. I think he's found something defensively that works really well. I think we're seeing another star center back in the making with Malik Diallo, and it's working now. We can only just hope that consistency continues to stay there. I mean, credit to them. I'm seeing stuff in the Gazzetta that's starting to create rumors and stir up the fans, saying that Calabria could be played as a center back over Kalulu, which is stupid if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, all the hype coming into the game was for Atalanta's striker partnership, right? And they got shut out. It's surprising, but I think it's credit to Milan. They're starting to find their stride again and play really good football.
Yeah, I think it was a really good performance for them. I think they've found their way, which isn't surprising. I never felt like they were in huge danger. I never felt like they were a team that was, we've seen teams have tough moments, and I think Milan out of a lot of clubs, especially in SerieA, had a really rough go, post World Cup, and we certainly talked about that. But this is also the lowest expected goals for Atalanta all season, 0.1. They really did not have a noteworthy attempt in this game, which we've talked about Lookman, right, and how good he's been this season, and so that's always a credit when you're able to, sometimes you get a shutout and maybe just things went your way a little bit. I think this is a solid defensive effort, and I think it's a lot of momentum because you get Spurs now, then you're into potentially the quarterfinals of the Champions League. You've got a good shot still at finishing in the Champions League spots within your own right in your domestic league. There's a lot, it's a nice come around now. So
yeah,
we'll see how that develops as we get into next week when we're back with the Champions League.
Yeah, I think the win against Tottenham really kind of lit a fire under them and helped them realize hey, look, we got this. And then you get that game against Monza. Now you got this one. And they've got a game against Fiorentina to hype them up for the UCL game, following that. So
Teo Hernandez robbed in this game as well of a
oh, dude, well, I don't understand why that's not called for the player. I get it. I get why if the goalie wasn't there, it's not going in. But that's variance. If that kind of the goalie didn't mean to own goal,
sure, but most players, I would also argue, don't mean to own goal. I think it's actually very rare that someone intentionally scores on themselves. But I understand your point, and it's just a bummer when you see that, and then he doesn't get the credit for a beautiful strike. But it hit the post, technically that ball could have gone anywhere. Just so happened to bounce off the back of the keeper and go in. We're gonna head to England, Dom. Spurs. They go marching in. Beat Chelsea 2-0. They've been on a good little run of form, and then hilariously, of course, get knocked out of the FA Cup at the midweek because that is just, I think, the Spurs' way. But this is the first time Spurs have beat Chelsea at their new stadium. This is a matchup that I think has given us a lot of drama over the years, and largely speaking, the quality play hasn't necessarily always been there. I think for Spurs, it's hard to say because mentally, this is a team that they've just not been able to beat over the years, and I've really struggled with. And this is beyond even just Spurs in their current form. I mean, this is historically a team that they've just not performed well against. So I think you always kind of like to see a team, get over the hump, so to speak, in that way. I don't know what it is with Spurs this year because they've been so hot and cold at times, and they haven't taken a step forward. Looking at the other side of this, Chelsea have just not been able to create goals and not been able to create even a lot of chances. And I think that's a massive concern for them moving forward. Talk about your team with a date with destiny in the Champions League. They're down 1-0 on aggregate to Dortmund in the Champions League. The game is going to be played in London. I think you could expect perhaps that. I don't know what to do with this Chelsea team because they spent so much money, and yet they're still being billed as this big rebuilding project. I
No.
don't know how to reconcile spending £600 million, but also being stressed patient so much, while also a ton of pressure. Like it is such an uncomfortable and awkward position. I think you're seeing that really weigh on Graham Potter as well. You see him in the post match press conferences talking about how he doesn't feel he's actually done anything to deserve like any sort of like equity with the ownership, and maybe he isn't comfortable in this position. Like that's an insane thing to say, and I don't disagree with him, of course. I don't think he's wrong when he says it, but it's crazy to hear him say that, and I don't know what Chelsea's next. Talk about Roma, a make or break month. March being a make or break month. It's similar for Chelsea because this is a team that is certainly not finishing in any European spots this year. They're very far off the mark. And now if you talk about being out of the Champions League, I don't know what's there for them this season.
Yeah, it's weird. Normally teams that spend like this type of money, you can only really name them all on one hand, and it's really just Real Madrid. And like, does Real Madrid ever get patience when they spend big money on players? And
even Real Madrid have not spent money in this manner.
Well,
Real
this
Madrid
is
are
ridiculous.
good for like Real Madrid. Like the last big money signing the Real Madrid makes is, I don't know, like even Hazard. Honestly, like,
PSG spending tons of money.
PSG
get
has
patience?
gone crazy for a few years.
Like,
Dom, we've never seen like 600 million.
This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented.
Of, money to be spending
but I guess what I'm trying to say is like you do have these teams that like money isn't an issue for them. You know what I'm saying? And they can go out and spend that type of money. And even when they do spend a decent amount of money on players that they bring in, and like I guess I'm also trying to factor in like the players that they already have like on the roster and like are paying like crazy fees to because they're superstars. Like these teams don't get patience with their success. It's you need to be good or next year they're going to replace you type deal. And like Chelsea spends all this money and they're still losing all these games. Nothing's being done. It's a dumpster fire for them, in my opinion. But
they have scored 2 goals since January 15th. One of those came in a 1-0 win over Crystal Palace. The other came in a 1-1 draw with West Ham.
They've almost a goal. That's almost a goal a month.
I mean, yes, there was a lovely bit of it was I saw on Twitter. It was a compilation of like Chelsea's goals of February, and it was just João Felix's. And just kept looping on his own.
That's so funny.
Tough. I would like to say that I feel bad for Chelsea fans, but I absolutely do not.
Yeah,
I don't want to. The deep part of me is truly reveling in all of this. As someone that watched Chelsea,
it's great, right?
By the way, the success as a young man, see them steal Fernando Torres from me. I can't help but feel just a little bit of joy every time I watch this because I'm like, you know what? I'm glad they're doing terribly. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm glad to see it. I love to see it, in fact. So shout out to Spurs for bringing me a little bit of joy. There's a big weekend in the relegation fight. I mean, we got a little more action because Arsenal and Everton played in the midweek, but Leeds beat Southampton 1-0. It was a well-worked goal for Junior Firpo that gives Leeds a really important 3 points. We were talking a lot about just kind of the merry-go-round of the top spots in Italy. It's similar with the relegation battle here in England, where you have bottom place to 14th being separated by 6 points. You can even extend that to Nottingham Forest sitting at 13 with 25 points. It's a 9-point gap or a 7-point gap. I'm sorry.
12 to 18 is 6 points.
Right. Like there's a small window here where just one weekend can really shift all of this. And because there's so many teams too that are in the mix, every weekend essentially you're getting one of these games. Like you have Southampton and Nottingham Forest this weekend, which is another important match, especially for Southampton. So Leeds crawl out of the basement. Everton lose at home, which is not ideal. Lose at home to Aston Villa 2-0. We talked a lot about how Everton, if they are going to stay up, that home form at Goodison Park is going to be crucial. I I worry a little bit about Everton. We've worried about them all year. They had a good performance against Leeds, but in 5 games of Sean Dyche, the only time I think they've looked good, like good, was against Arsenal. Like they genuinely performed very well in that match. I think they had good moments during Leeds. I didn't think they were wildly convincing. But against Arsenal, again, at midweek, they looked very outclassed. They never really had the great opportunities against Villa, and they were, I think, just outplayed on the whole by Liverpool. Maybe a touch unlucky, but still, we've not seen consistent performances. You're hoping that Sean Dyche could come in and turn this around and quickly, and that has not happened. I think, the alarm bells start to ring a little bit if you're an Everton fan, especially because, again, similar problem to Chelsea, where goal scoring and creation is not good. They don't do that part of the game very well at all, and that is just one of the most important parts of the game is being able to score. That's crucial to you staying up, and they don't have a reliable goal scorer whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, the teams that are right above Everton, I just can't see dropping beneath them with the way that Everton's playing for all the reasons that you just said.
Do you know who Everton's top scorer in the Premier League is this year?
I feel like it's not somebody obvious. I'm gonna say.
I will give you a hint that it's not someone who's on the team anymore. They moved in January.
Can you give me the club?
It went to Newcastle.
Is that Anthony Gordon?
Anthony Gordon with 3 goals.
That's what I was gonna say at first, and then I just wanted to make sure.
Next is Damari Gray with 2. One of those, 3, being one of those being a penalty, and Dwight McNeil with 2. Not great.
And that's it. Like that's it all. That's ridiculous.
Just, not what you want. If you know what I mean. So that that's not something you can really fix, I don't think, either.
No.
So that is a massive.
What do you do? What do you do? Do you kind of
if I'm Everton?
Yeah.
Well, I would build a time machine with all the money that I spent instead, and figure out a way to fix this problem 5 or 6 years ago by not spending like £500 million on very average players. In fact, below average players. That's probably what I would do. I honestly, truly, you need to just win the games against the teams that are like solely around you. This is how they stayed up last year. And last year, too, they sacrificed a little bit on that attacking end by just being very solidly defensive wise. And Frank Lampard was able to kind of tool them up in the last month and a half of the season, and were able to just get points to survive. They're going to have to do something similar again this year, because personnel-wise, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has not been able to stay healthy, and even when he has not looked his usual self, or the self that we were hoping we might see a little bit more of a breakout. So that's, I think, been frustrating in some respects, but he just I don't know what it is, man. He has not been able to stay healthy this year, and I think that's very frustrating. Really, the last few seasons, I think, with Everton. So I don't know. They're a very hard team to fix because they don't have a ton of talent. They're not one of these teams like West Ham was a few weeks ago that catches a little bit of fire, and you kind of expect that. It's Jared Bowen, I think, is going to figure it out. Declan Rice is going to figure it out. Not sure who's figuring it out on Everton. And then that goes for a lot of these teams. I'm not sure who on Bournemouth is figuring this out. I'm not sure that James Ward-Prowse is a mercurial enough player to really keep Southampton involved in the Premier League again next year. Leeds don't have one of these go-to guys. Wolves, have not had a reliable goal scorer, especially since Raul Jimenez is it. A lot of these teams just do not, and that's part of why you go down, right? Is a talent acquisition problem. But yeah, Everton, to me, I just I'm not sure I see it. I'm not sure I see it.
Do you think that it would make a little bit of sense or be beneficial to them to get relegated and spend a year in the championship?
No, Dom. If Everton get relegated this season, you are looking at them plummeting, because they have a lot of money tied up in their new stadium. This is already a team that can't spend money. That's been part of the issues, because they spent so poorly the last few years. They were really limited financially in what they could do. If this team goes down, I think you are.
So they become this decade's Portsmouth, basically.
I'm a little worried about them.
Like,
is what I'm saying. You know?
like worse than the Portsmouth situation?
Well, Portsmouth was like way beyond that. It was much worse. Like Portsmouth, you're talking about like borderline fraud. Like think of like Sunderland though, right? Where Sunderland for years were like a
Okay.
relatively stable club in the
Okay,
Premier
okay.
League, right? Like they never certainly were as good as Everton were, right? Everton were a team that was perennially finishing in somewhere in like the top 7, top 8. But Sunderland for a few years circling the drain. Even a team like Aston Villa, right? Aston Villa had some really good highs in the late 2000s. For 3, 4, 5 years, it felt like, man, this team is just sort of going down. Everton has followed a very similar path to these clubs where, you are like a stable team that's in the Premier League every year, maybe going deep in the cups, whatever, and you make 2, 3, 4 bad decisions, and all of a sudden you're in a very tough spot. And I worry about their ability to bounce right back up should they. But it's that is not written in stone just yet. There's a ton of season left, but every game week, it gets a little more scary. They got just absolutely blown away by Arsenal, who reestablished themselves at the top of the table, giving themselves a nice little 5-point cushion over Manchester City. The title race is really heated up, and I'm excited about it. And then Manchester United win the first domestic trophy available to English clubs with I'll be honest, I'm not satisfying. It's hard for me to ever really take satisfaction in United winning a cup, but not the best cup final I've ever seen in my life. It was sort of over after 2-0. I never felt like Newcastle were going to have just kind of the ability to get back in that game. I can commiserate with Newcastle fans when you have Loris Karius in net for a cup final. Although I don't think he really made any mistakes in this game, but yeah, I get it, is what I'm also saying. So, I don't love United being on a nice little upturn. I don't love that their upturn is also when we have to play them this weekend. So there's a ton of games, by the way, because we always like to talk a little bit about the games coming up and like kind of give people an idea of like what fixtures to look forward to. This might be one of the best weekends for games. We're going to start it in England. Manchester City, Newcastle, a nice little Middle East derby right there, of course, right? You've got the Nuno Espirito Santos derby in Wolves versus Tottenham. That's great. I mean, who's going to miss that? We have Nottingham Forest, Everton, a nice, relegation, implication type of game. You have Southampton and Leicester, similar types of things, although Leicester's a little more comfortable, similar to Nottingham Forest. You have Liverpool, Manchester United, always an interesting matchup at the very least. Two of the most successful clubs, not just in England, but in all of Europe. And then in Italy, you've also got Napoli Lazio on Friday or today, whenever you're listening to this. Don't miss it. That's going to be a great game. You got Fiorentina against Milan. That is fantastic. A great matchup. Near the bottom of the table, you got Spezia and Hellas Verona. There's a lot to dig into there. You've got Roma Juventus. I mean, you kind of spoiled for choice here, if I'm being honest. You got plenty to chew on. So,
given Atalanta's form, their game against Udinese has a lot of like stipulation too in the table. So that's a game with a little bit riding, with some stakes riding on that match. So, and if you're a bettor, don't take my betting advice. But that's like one of the games you may want to watch.
Well. Yeah, I think we do well to not take your betting advice unless it's about Monza beating Red. Do you got any feelings on Monza? Anything tickling the nervous system?
They're playing Empoli. That's a dub. All right, so listen.
There you go.
Put
the kids' college fund on it.
Over 2.5 goals. Andrea Pitania to score at any time.
Absolutely sick individual. Just a sick individual. We did have the Europa League draw, which I just wanted to touch on briefly because we got some England and Italian clubs here that I think a lot of the English and Italian clubs are actually the best remaining teams in the Europa League competition. You still have the specter of Sevilla, who have turned it around a little bit and just have a history with the Europa League. They get match up with Fenerbahce. But outside of them, Arsenal gets Sporting Club in Portugal. I think a winnable tie for them, although it's going to be interesting to see what Arsenal's priorities are, especially, they haven't had to worry about Europe for a while now, and that I'm going to be curious to see how they rotate a little bit, and that's going to be an extra challenge for them, as they have to care about a title race. Roma versus Real Sociedad, we talked about a little bit when we were looking at Roma's schedule. That is a fantastic matchup. I'm really looking forward to that. Manchester United get Real Betis. That's a
that one.
Manchester United should probably be expecting to go through that match, but that is a fun one. Juventus versus Freiburg. I mean, talk about the hipster derby there. I mean, come on, I mean, Jesus, Freiburg, a little an upstart team in Bundesliga, right? That have had maybe unexpected success over the last few years. Have been the top ends of the table. I'm really interested to see that matchup. All of those teams you mentioned, I think, honestly, from England and Italy, I think have a decent chance of progressing. None of those matchups to me are wow. I think the hardest is probably Roma and Sociedad. I think that's the one I would probably look at and be a little concerned for. But I feel reasonably confident that United, Juventus, Arsenal probably progressing in that situation. I would expect.
I don't know. I feel like Betis has a couple players that could give Manchester United an issue, but you're talking about third in the Premier League, so yeah, I could probably. I mean,
they dispatched Barcelona, league leaders, pretty well. I thought they handled that tie, both those games. I think in a very strong manner. It's hard for me to doubt them.
I think the hipster matchup is Shakhtar Feyenoord.
Yeah,
that's the one to go and watch.
Yeah, that's for the real ones. Watch only.
Union Berlin and Union FG. There we go.
Who played in the group stage? Great to have the two unions reuniting. Pretend that I know English.
It's a reunion of the unions.
Europa. Shout out to the Union. Nice win over the weekend. Europa Conference League. Lazio versus the Europeans say ZZ. But I'm not doing that. AZ Alkmaar, there you go. Fiorentina, get Sivasspor. I'm looking forward to that. Andiamo Viola. West Ham get Ike. Not the Greek it's a different one. And then that's it. That's it for our England and Italian contingent in the Conference League. So I don't know who my favorite is in this competition at this point. There's not a lot to chew on here. I would think it'd be really funny if West Ham, go on a nice little cup run yet again, and we kind of have to. We kind of get those. I really enjoyed watching them go deep into the Europa League last year. I would like to pick Lazio, but there's just no chance that they're consistent enough. I think they might actually be out at this stage because they were almost out in the previous. Truly, in my deepest hearts, I would love to see Fiorentina go very far. But I look at a team like Villarreal or Nice, and I get a funny feeling about those two.
I am an honorary Nice fan in this one because I have a Yusuf Atal FIFA card.
Here it is.
It's a live card. He gets upgrades as Nice progresses through the games. So
now I want them to be out. Now I'm out.
Wow. You just don't want to see me succeed, man.
They hate to see us win.
No, well, I can also not morally root for Lazio ever. So, that one's kind of out for me. I'd love to see Fiorentina go far. I think what you say about a Villarreal and Nice kind of fits for Fiorentina too. I feel like people aren't because since Lazio is also, still in contention, people are highlighting Lazio because they're perennially better. So I feel like Fiorentina is kind of being slept on. But
Fiorentina have been better in recent weeks, but they've been really inconsistent this season. Arturo Cabral has really turned it on in the last few weeks. He's on a nice little vein of form. And, if that continues, maybe the sky's the limit for Fiorentina, but they are the club in Italy that I find myself attached to most. And what I've learned in my years of watching Fiorentina is that they give you these nice 2 or 3 games where you feel like, man, this team is really picking up, and they crush your hearts in a very cruel way. And they have just really struggled for consistency. So that's Europe settled. we already went through the games at the weekend. I mean, again, block off some time if you can, because you got a great one. And then we're back next week with the Champions League. We'll get the conclusion to some of these games, and we'll have some established already quarterfinal teams to look over and think about. We have the conclusion of PSG and Bayern, which I think a lot of people are obviously looking forward to, and for our interest, Milan versus Spurs will be wrapped up. So yeah, anything to say before we get out of here, Tom?
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I saw a thread on Twitter. It posed a question, and it said, "What was the most overpowered FIFA card for you playing Ultimate Team, over the years?" So I wanted to ask you that question because I know like you're an OG like me. You used to play like early on before you kind of moved on because it got, extremely repetitive and boring and we kind of just got older. So, but from your FIFA heyday, who do you think was one of the most like overpowered? But like what I mean like overpowered is not like, your top end cards or your top end players, a card or a player who plays for like a Fiorentina, but played like ridiculous, like in the video game.
So I think there's one name that a certain age player will always remember. A name like Victor Barbo, I think is one of the, I don't know, what would you even call him? One of the most frustrating players I think ever. Seydou Doumbia as well. Got a little love for him. Wagner Love, if you're going like foot 11 type of days. The CSKA Moskva like trio, because you had him and Honda, and there was another guy I'm thinking of. I think that played either in the Russian league or like in that, because didn't Aaron McGeady play
was he on Dynamo?
In the Russian league? I think he played in the Russian league. He always had 5-star skills. Was always like a very popular player to
also
pick up.
Hulk when he made his move.
Hulk was in Zenit.
Porto. Yeah.
So yeah, I think of those guys that were like 1,000 coins that you could just pick up and play, and were just the best cards in the game that you could get.
This is who I said. Well, I wanted to say Fabrizio Micoli.
Great card.
But somebody posted that picture, so I said, let me give you a Brazilian duo, and that's Felipe Santana, center back, and then
Dida or D. What was it?
Who's
the other?
Dede.
There we go.
Nasty.
Got my Brazilians mixed up.
But then I said FIFA 14 Ramirez.
Wow. Yep.
Nobody that guy, you talk about cards today, it's like Vieira. Like that was an 80 overall card that you could get for like 1,500 coins off the market. There it is.
Yeah.
Good
Better times before anyone ever uttered the words pack fodder and nonsense. I think Ultimate Team made a mistake when they just didn't let people buy coins. I think that's when
I mean, it's still possible, but now you have the chance of getting banned because of it. So
I've not been involved with Ultimate Team for like 4 years. I think like 19, 20 was around where it was like, this is just not too much of a grind. Not enough fun for me. I think this is a problem with video games in general. Is I think if it feels like a job, it's just not for me. I work a job all day. I work hard all day. I want to come home and like relax. That is why Rocket League has remained as one of my favorite games to just turn on and play. I dived back in the last few weeks because I've had a little more free time with some Pokemon. Just turn off the brain and just and like people are making spreadsheets for Ultimate Team and I'm like, Christ, that's
can't say that I haven't done that.
It's just a lot. That's just too much for me. It's too much for me.
There were like the last like 2 years in the summer when the game's basically done, they've released like a 85 times 10, like 85 plus rated players, 10 cards in a pack, like SBC that you could repeat. And basically when all like the promo cards and all the best cards in the game are like out and available in packs, like you basically get a whole bunch of cards, and whatever your duplicates are, you can just recycle and do these like repeatedly forever. And like, still, I'm like, when I was going to see what I could throw in, I was trying to do like all the icon SBCs and stuff. So I'm making a spreadsheet of like how many of each rated card I had that I considered fodder, like who's untouchable. Like it was really, I had to take a step back and look at my priorities.
I listen, if it's what you like, it's what you like. Just for me, it got to a point where it was not fun anymore. That's, I think,
I think,
no
I
shade,
think some of the
hate.
some of the fun for me now is just because like I'm creating content doing it. And like, even like whatever form I'm doing that, whether I'm just sharing it with a few people or I'm making a YouTube video or I'm posting on Twitter or whatever it may be, like it just makes it, I guess, a little more enjoyable for me than, if I was just sitting here and just playing it, like you said, like trying to turn the brain off and kind of just like go and play. That's why I've really enjoyed like Hogwarts Legacy, and I was playing like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, like games like that were like just really fun to like just relax and play. But yeah, so I appreciate that. Thanks. That was a good answer. Good old times. I was curious to see where you would go. So
nothing will beat the heyday of Ultimate Team. I think that's truly, if we could return to that time when solo teams were actually fun, we'd be in a better place. I think as a country, I think as a world, as a global community, I think we'd be in a better spot. I was looking for it in my notes because I know that when I was like a freak, similar to you, I would like, you remember the league SPCs? I don't know that you're still a thing, but I would like
they're sort of the same thing.
I list out all the clubs and like the players that I had, the players I needed a bit, what I bought them for, what I could sell them for. So yeah, and listen, if it sounds like too much, it's because it is.
Listen, now what I do is I'm constantly watching the market because I have multi-millions invested in only 2 players on my team, and it's just like I'm waiting for the market to start dropping so I know when to sell them. But it's like they're team of the year cards.
You got too much dip on your chip.
I'm sitting on $1.5 million in profit on one of the cards, but I can't sell it because it's one of the best cards in the game and I like using it. And I'm just waiting. I'm just, profit management. I'm trying to maximize it.
Well,
I don't even know how to trade. Like, I should be using this on the actual stock market and making myself real money.
I gotta tell you, one of my goals last year was to learn more about the stock market so that I could, like, when I'm making a little more money the next few years, I could like start investing more. My I downloaded an app that just sort of like has the stock market, but it gives you like fake money, so you can just learn to like invest. I gotta tell you, if I really had $25,000, we'd be in a good spot. I'm gonna just tell you that, we'd be all right. So once I learned how to get a real $25,000 in the stock market, they were cooking.
Throw it all in Bitcoin and NFTs. Let's go.
Yeah. If I wanted to lose all of that money, all this fake wealth that I've accumulated.
Oh, man.
We'll be back next week with all of our financial advice tips about the newest NFT that you should definitely 100% buy in. Is 100% not a scam. Is not going to ruin your life. Remember this time last year when everyone was talking about NFTs and crypto and saying that it was the future and that you were going to make a ton of money and that everyone else could have fun being poor? Yeah. Have fun getting your Bitcoin stolen and you can't contact anyone. There's nothing. There's no service. There's no oversight. There's no regulation. I don't know where I was going, but we'll see you next week. I hope that you didn't lose. I hope you didn't lose your kid's college fund on a picture of a dog on the internet. See ya.